Well, welcome. This is a new medium for us to try to communicate with our community in a little different level. I don't know if we're trying to get up with the times, but we think some direct, face-to-face contact with things going on in the district will be a healthy thing for us. I'd really like to thank Stevie Holdinghausen for her work and thoughtfulness going into this. And really, we're in the infancy part of this. This projection back here, the painting, is not quite finished yet. It's going to look sharper as time goes along, but we just felt like it was time to get this out and move forward with podcasting here at Jefferson R-7. Over time, we'll be doing short form and long form podcasting. Sometimes just to let our district know what's going on, it'll be a short form for maybe just some quick event notifications. Today is going to be a long form though. And so really the intent today is to get to know our staff better, or just the way we operate in the district. And I can't think of a better person. And before I introduce him, he and I both know that the success of Jefferson R-7 is not about one person, and it's not just about one group. It's been a district that's been in existence since around 1949, with the addition of a high school for the first graduating class in 2013. Those things don't just happen without others, but I can't think of a better person to do our first one with, given all the technology where we are today with we worked together for 12 years. This is his 13th year in the district. With Mr. Clint Johnston, it's kind of odd because we're down to our last couple days, and it's kind of like that point of the year when we need a break. But when we come back from that break here in the short future, you're not going to be there, and that's going to be a little different for me. So welcome, first of all, thank you.
Thank you. I appreciated the opportunity when you asked me to do this, and quite honestly, it's been good for me because David has given me a chance to really go back and think about the 13 years, 12 that you and I have been together, and all the things that we have accomplished, and quite honestly, some of the things that we did that didn't go as well as we hoped they would. And we learned to take those situations and grow from those opportunities. And so we're looking at a chance to reflect on 13 years. And when you asked me to do this, I just want you to know it was an honor. And I want to give a shout out to Stevie as well. Mrs. Holdinghausen does a great job with our technology in the district, and I just can't wait to see where we're at, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years down the road because of her leadership and what she's doing to bring more information to her community. And this is the vision that she has with you, and a little bit of discussion with me when she came on board. And it's just exciting. But to be here and be the first one is, it's an honor. I'm not going to tell you it's not. Because I truly believe in this district. I tell people all the time, I found my home when I came here. I've loved every minute of the 13 years that I've been here. It's not always been easy, but leadership isn't easy. Sometimes in leadership you're put in positions where you have to, you make decisions, and as a part of that, sometimes it's not decisions that everyone's going to agree with, but you come to a place and you hope when you leave it's better than what it was when you got here. And I think we can say that Jefferson R-7 is better than what it was when we arrived 13 years ago.
I agree. And it was in great shape when we came here.
It was.
I think that's my hope moving forward, is that we can keep building on what's been established and move forward. Now, so I'm going to treat the first question sort of like our interviews, okay, when we come in. So I've read your resume. Actually, I'm lying. From talking to you, I kind of know what your history is. So you started as a teacher at Kelly High School. Baseball and basketball, Kelly, or just baseball? Baseball. You went from there to teach at South Iron.
Mm-hmm.
From there, you became a middle school principal at Arcadia Valley.
Yes.
Back to high school principal at South Iron
For 5 years.
5 years. Went to Bunker as superintendent for
4 years.
3 or 4 years. 4 years. Then from there to Poplar Bluff as a CFO.
4 years, assistant superintendent of district administration and finance.
Okay. So my wife had asked me what CFO is. I said Chief Financial Officer. She said, okay, that makes sense. So
Sure.
It wasn't CFO, but you had a different title.
Well, I had all the finances. You get a title because I was responsible for all the facilities, vocational programs, food, transportation, grounds, buildings. But in the end, I was responsible for their budget, was
Sure.
CFO. And then came here, 13 years here.
So the first question we ask in our interviews is why R-7?
Because of its potential, I'll never forget when I came in for my first interview and the board at the high school, and I drove in, and it was in the middle of winter. It was in January, and I drove down 61, and I could see the school setting off to the left of the highway as I was driving in. And I pulled in, and I came in, and I pulled up to the facilities, and I saw the facilities, and had a chance to really just drive into the facilities and just look at everything from the standpoint of what it was, and the fact that there wasn't a city or an area. It was the community school was the fact that the school was everything. If it happened, as I was doing my research about Jefferson R-7, I could see that the school was where it was happening. The other thing was as I was sitting there and looking at it and going through the interview process and touring the schools and seeing everything, was the possibilities. No different than this wall behind us. It was the blank canvas that had started in a white wall. And the school district was a white wall. It was transitioning. It had 1 year of ninth grade students in it. There were 70 kids in that class. And looking at where it was going to go over the next 3 to 5 to 8 to 10 to 13 years, and what those possibilities were, was just endless. If we could get through the events and the challenges that were in their face right there at the point in time when I came in. And at that time, it was all about the financials. The financials were challenging, but you once you found your way out of those challenges with the financial implications, the sky was the limit. And man, it was just one of those things where it started to take off, and we started to add people and to have a chance to hire as many people as I had a chance to hire. At one time, I had hired or promoted over 95% of the people in the school district here. That's
quite a number.
To imprint those cultural and climate expectations of what R-VII was about, because Jefferson is a school district predicated on relationships. The community thrives in being involved, and those relationships are so important. And I could see that in the interviews with the board members and how involved they were in the school, and I could see that in the district as I got here and things started happening. And from that, it was just, okay, now where's this thing gonna go? Did I know it was gonna become what it is now? Absolutely not. No one could have projected that we would have seen as many of the successes that we're gonna talk about in this podcast over that 13 years. But that wasn't because of me. That was because of all of the people that we were able to add to our ship. You know, I start every year off talking about to the staff about, people that you add to the ship and being ready for that journey. And it's like a cruise ship. You put everything on the ship, all the people on the ship, all the supplies on the ship, and then you pull away from the dock. You want to be on the ship. You don't want to be swimming after it. But the most important thing is everyone played a role, and sometimes you pull the oars, sometimes you hold the rudder, and you want to add people that brings, oars to the boat, not drills.
Yeah, that's good. That's well said.
Because when they bring drills to the boat, bad things happen.
Yeah, your trip gets real short.
It does.
I guess unless it's a metal boat, then it would be hard. But we're going to go back to the old oars, and I'll leave it.
Let's look at it as a wooden ship and leave it at that.
I don't disagree with you. I think one of the advantages of being at Jefferson, you and I both have worked in small schools, rural schools, a lot of our lives, and then to come here and kind of have that rural feel without a town, and you are the center of attention, but also kind of the nice part is to be that 40 minutes from Busch Stadium if you want to go watch a Cardinal game, and to be close to some other activities for your families and for your kids in school and all that. I think that's kind of some of the missing. Yes, small school life is different than large school life, and we had a long talk about that yesterday with our area superintendents at a meeting, and just the differences. And I'm very thankful and grateful to be here. I know you have been. So that kind of gets us through the why R-VII. So part of the unique part of Jefferson was the fact, I kind of look at the history, and I'm not talking about high schools that get split off in a district where a high school is, I'm talking about the true addition to a K-8 district. I think Jefferson, again, through many people being a part of this, Jefferson High School's really been off to a great start with academic, extracurricular. It's been a great start. That being said, when you got here, I was here with juniors, and you were here with freshmen and sophomores in the building. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So kind of walk us through that timeline of coming into a district. I can tell you the first year I was here, there were juniors. I was cutting grass in the spring. I thought, it's kind of nice not to have the graduation ceremony and better enjoy it for 1 year because we were getting ready for it. So kind of talk about that timeline of the high school and then getting to that first graduation ceremony.
Well, there was a ton of energy as we added each class to the high school. When we first started at the high school, when I got here and was interviewing, there was 4 classes in the high school. And so there were all the extracurricular opportunities were being done from staff members that were in the Danby Middle School
And by classes, you mean just 4 classrooms?
4 classrooms
Yeah,
full
like
of
kids
students.
rotating, yes.
4 classes.
Gotcha.
Like all the extracurriculars, the shop, the band, a lot of those events that was in the schedule were being brought over from shared staff from the Danby Middle School. And you had your course that were being taught by the 4 teachers that had been hired. So we, in the second year, was responsible for hiring the next round of teachers, which was going to be 4 core teachers addition. And then you were going to be looking at some of the extracurriculars, your fine arts staff, your practical arts staff, your business teacher, your fax teacher, your librarians, and those situations. So it was unique because, again, there was no blueprint to what it was going to look like. In some ways, that was scary. Mm-hmm. But in other ways, if you put together a plan and you knew what that plan was going to be, and I remember the first thing that I did was I went home after I was offered the job, and I started to think about what was the graduation going to look like 3 years out. How are we going to get there? How are we going to take the things that I had seen at other schools that I'd worked in, and you coming on board, and Mark Ruark was our principal at the time, and we had all worked in other schools. And I remember having those conversations with our leadership team at the high school about getting ready for the sophomores and what that needed to look like, and getting ready for the juniors and our first prom, and getting ready for the first homecoming, and getting ready for our first homecoming parade, and getting ready, all of those things that so many times in schools that you are a part of, that you move into, those traditions and those expectations were already established. Mm-hmm. Yes. We created those, and so it was really fun because we did a lot of that work as an administrative team, but we made it a focus on allowing the students to work with us to tell us what they wanted to have happen for that experience to be special to them. So when we got to each of those events, we were receiving a lot of feedback from our students and our staff that resulted in some really engaged and high participation events. I remember our first homecoming parade, and I'll never forget it. We came from the high school over to Danby, down Blue Jay Way, and I'm thinking, okay, we're going to have this homecoming parade. We've got 3 classes, and are we going to have anyone that's going to show up? Mm-hmm. And all of the kids are standing out there from all the other schools, but it's in the middle of the day, and here's all of these parents that are along the side of the road, and then we started adding more and more and more and more. And now that we've gotten to a point where we're, years past that, 2013 being our first graduating class, now year 11 of that, you see now kids coming back. Mm-hmm. You see their kids now, that graduates kids who are now in school that are in the floats, with the elementary kids that are in the play, the parade, and the lower ends. And that's really, it's unique to see that. And so to watch the high school grow was special. It really was a fun time because it wasn't a situation where we were going to do anything that was going to bring harm to our students, but we were about making every one of the decisions that we made the best decision to create the best outcomes, to make a long-term impact on our climate and culture as we transition from a K-9 to a K-10 to a K-11 to a K-12. And I think that was the thing that I enjoyed most about that transition. Now, from an instruction standpoint, curriculum, putting lockers in the school,
Yeah, crazy.
purchasing textbooks, purchasing chairs. There were a lot of things that we did not have that we had to have. And so there was a lot of work that came with that. Building athletic schedules, I remember our first, when we had sophomores, playing a football schedule of which we only played a JV schedule.
Yes.
And I remember, our girls basketball team, the first district basketball we played in with our girls basketball team, they went down, we played in that district, we didn't win, but we competed with sophomores and then with juniors. And I remember how excited our parents were that, we competed in that environment, even though we got beat by teams that had juniors and seniors. And wow, what an experience. I remember when we had our first baseball experience, when we went to Chaffee and they were hosted districts, and those kids went down and we got beat 3-1 by Chaffee, who went on and did very well in the state tournament. And how proud our parents and our community was of our student athletes and our coaches and the way we represented our school district. And you could see that there was a ton of pride, which kind of went back to why R-VII, but that pride was creating a lot of what I call little moments of which all of these younger kids were looking at these older kids that were setting a standard and saying, man, I want to be like that student. I want to be that kid in band that is playing trombone and playing, on the football field and as a football player and playing tuba and then, playing baseball. And it was just it was a really neat experience at every level to watch that all work out and the way the high school grew. Now, the pinnacle of that was the first graduation.
Yeah, before I get to that question, I do remember my sister coming in to watch our first homecoming parade, and I kind of stood up there at the top of the hill where it kind of, would wind down, and she was up there with me, and she goes, and keep in mind, we've been educated, my parents are educated, so we've been a ton of homecoming parades, and I've run them off and been there as administrator, coach, all the way through. But her comment was, she goes, I've never seen so many people so genuinely happy. And that was I think that was kind of a culmination of things, and it was kind of a neat moment. And those are things I think that sometimes, and you and I sometimes still kind of think of the high school as new, and it really isn't anymore. We're 10 years in, but we hold on to those memories. So the actual graduation ceremony itself, I will say this, I know there were a lot of people working really hard, but the cherry on top was getting Andrea Hancock in here from Kingston to really tie a lot of those loose ends together for us to make sure that was a seamless ceremony. But that was a unique situation too, because you had the governor here that evening. It was the first graduation. I'll let you take it from there.
I don't recall much of the graduation because it went so fast. I remember before the graduation, the photo that we took with all of the staff and the students we gave all the kids a medallion for the first graduating class. And I remember all of the kids up in the stands when we take our senior graduation photo. And we still do that, and all of the kids there, but we had all of our staff around the students, and that was a big deal. Matter of fact, we still have that photo in the conference room next to the high school.
Absolutely.
Your office, the high school principal, next to Mr. Rugley's office. And I remember that night as being special because we invited all the former superintendents that were a part of the Jefferson R-7 School District, and the crowd was just huge. I mean, it was a big group of people, tons of energy, tons of excitement. We had a great year with our senior year. We had competed. We had some really good test scores. We had some things going on with, coming off of the fine arts with the MMEA event a couple years earlier, and then the kids had done some more stuff with that. We had a lot of really good things that I thought was leading up to graduation. And then you and I had a meeting, and I'll never forget this meeting when you and Mark and I were together. And you made the statement to me is that, and I appreciated this, was we want this to be an experience where we look like we've done it before.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And that was our goal as an administrative team, was to make it an event that it looked like we had done it before. And if we could get to that point where everything was organized and structured, and all the way down to the huge flag that was behind the stage area. And then as far as the event itself, Governor Jay Nixon was here. I was seated beside him. It was just a blur because there was so much happening. It went so fast, and then we got to the end of it. And then I remember at the end of the graduation event, a lot of schools, they walk their students out after the graduation, and the kids go outside. And when they do that, everyone just kind of disperses out of the gym. And we chose not to do that. We chose to leave our students in their seats and let everything just kind of go organic. And the students kind of found their families, and they just stayed in that area. And I remember standing up on the stage afterwards as the governor was departing and talking to him and watching everything, and just standing back with you and with Mr. Ruark and watching all of that. How much of a happy moment, the celebration, to watch all of those kids interact with their parents. And it was like, okay, this is what it was supposed to be, and it was a joyful event for me. It was exciting. There was an energy like I'd never seen in a graduation, because it truly at that point was all leading up to that moment. They turned their tassel, they threw their hats, and we dismissed them, and the place was just alive with energy. And it was special. And it was really, really enjoyable to see that from a superintendent's standpoint, because at that moment it was like, okay, we've arrived. We are now a K-12 institution. We have accomplished a goal, and now where do we go from here?
Yeah. And I think that's our outdoor ceremonies have been great the last couple of years. But I think that's the one thing that people didn't understand about the indoor ceremony, was at the end when everybody would kind of converge down with their kids. I mean, it was a really special time, and just the energy in the building, and there's something to being indoors at that point as well. And that changed with COVID. I mean, it is what it is, but that was a special time. Two things about graduation. We only forgot to bring the diploma covers out once.
Yeah.
So some of the behind the scenes that you can't see is that we get up there, and Kelly Becker, the board president, looks over at me, and I think you were still kind of walking in, and he goes, "Hey, where are the diplomas?" Thankfully, nothing had started yet. I don't know. So, Mr. Johnston and I ran back and down the hallway. I think as a building principal, you're always you're tired and you're nervous. You want this to go so well for the kids. We had the biggest laugh down and back. I was almost in tears laughing, like, how could you forget the diplomas?
It was funny, and it was one of those deals where it could have gone so many ways, but the way it went, it was. The board president walks in, all the board members are there, and he looks at us and he says, "Where's the diplomas?" And you look at me and I look at you, and we take off running, and we got through it, and probably one of those behind the scenes memories that I cherish the most. Yeah. Because at the time, we're both thinking, goodness gracious, what are people thinking us? We're responsible for running this school, and we can't even remember to get the diplomas up on the stage.
Get the diplomas.
But we made it work. But yeah, we're both running down the hallway to get them, and both of us are just dying laughing. And I think that's educational humor that too many times people don't see.
They don't see it, no.
And they don't know.
I mean,
and people are going to see this podcast, and it's going to be the first time they're going to be like, "Well, what year was it that they didn't have the diplomas up there?" But it was.
To this day, on graduation day, I take a picture of the table and I do send it to Kelly and thank him that we haven't missed it since.
Yeah, and that was a good moment. In regards to Andrea and not just Andrea, but Mrs. Runzie at the counselors, and Suzanne Richardson before her. Man, they played such a huge role.
Huge, and they work hard.
And they worked so hard that week, getting all of the stuff to the finish line. And the senior awards the night before, and the way we do that in the baccalaureate, which is strictly student led. To have those events the way we do it, and to have a graduation ceremony that, quite honestly, 70 kids, about an hour.
Yeah.
And indoors, whether it's indoor or outdoor. We get through it, everybody's excited. The kids are the ones that's doing all the speaking. You don't hear a lot from the superintendent. You don't hear a lot from the principal. You hear a lot from, the kids and their input. We get those diplomas to them, and they graduate, and that's that threshold of that benchmark of preparing and moving on to the next chapter in life.
The other memory for me at graduation is there was one year where a young man had thrown his hat and he got caught up in the rafters. And if you know Clint just a little bit, he gets a little bit wound up on occasion. He's like, "Oh, we got to get the lift out here. We're going to do this." I said, "You give me a football, I'll get that down in less than 5 shots." So 3 shots later, we had that captain. We hadn't do any extra effort. It was a lot of fun.
That's right.
Just things those are things you won't forget.
No, up high and stuck, right? And they always throw them high, and that's that energy. But I'll miss that. I think the things that I'll miss as a superintendent is the graduations and those kids that all of the work that those kids, not the kids that that are going to be successful, but some of the kids that didn't necessarily have the best road to success, and yet they found their path, and they found their path because of the investment of some great teachers and support staff, or a cook, or a secretary, or a nurse, or a great counselor that just spent the time with them and invested with them and got them to that finish line. And you see so many of those kids now when you're out at Walmart or you're having dinner, and you see they come up to you, "This is my wife, this is my husband, this is my family. I just want to thank you for not giving up on me." That's what it's all about. And I'll miss that because our graduations were truly a special event. You've said this, I agree with you in your statement when you were the high school principal, and we both live it as a central office staff now. You don't get do-overs with graduations. You get it right. You make sure you cover every detail, and if you do that right, it really sends everyone home at the end of the year with a really good taste in their mouth about your district.
Yeah. Well, I enjoy listening to that. We haven't talked about that in a while. You have the high school that's finished. You have what I think was kind of unique during that time was not just getting to the graduation, but behind the scenes meetings we were having. And I think you stated it well, then I'm going to turn it over to you. Really between that time period, we'll say 2014 to say 20, and later in those teens is really when we became a real true K through 12 district. And I want you to kind of elaborate on that. Because you've mentioned that a couple times, and I don't disagree with it, but the cosmetic graduation ceremony was awesome, but there were so many things that were building towards the future at that point.
Well, I think the thing that I tell people, it's easy to climb the mountain one time. It's a sports reference. You look at people that are ascending to that opportunity of trying to win a championship. Our graduation was our championship. Jefferson R-7.
I know, yes, I agree.
And you played college football, you understand that. I played college baseball. We all were working towards trying to get to that moment. My thing was about halfway through the junior year, with the first graduating class, I began to really think about what is going to happen between the graduating class of 2014 and where we needed to be 3, 5, 10 years down the road.
So if I could interject here for just a second. What Mr. Johnston's alluding to is that, and I'm going to start with this subject first, is the college credit expansion at Jefferson High School. So if you could imagine in the morning, we might be planning for the graduation. In the afternoon, we were all meeting with Jeffco's president, myself, you, Suzanne, Mr. Ruark, all going over there to look at what we could do to expand these options for kids. And I think that that's kind of I don't mean this in a bad way, it's kind of taken for granted now, but that was a huge deal getting that on board.
It was, and one of the things I hated the most was our first graduating class did not get a chance, was not provided a chance to have those college course experiences.
Right.
We had so many things that was going on that we could not really do a whole lot more because our plate was full. Our staff was working, we were humming, everything that needed to be done to get to that graduation. But we were having those meetings to get ready for that college transition opportunity, and that's where the tuition sharing event came from when we designed with Jeffco an opportunity for all of our students to have a shared tuition event where the parents would pay a third, we would pay a third, the college would pay a third, and if the student scored a 27 or higher on their ACT, then we would reimburse them for their third, and that the events would, the college experience would be 100% free for the student. And my mindset for those thoughts, and I wanted to create a true 8-semester high school experience for kids.
Yep.
And you were becoming the high school principal at that time. Mr. Ruark was getting to a point where he was going to retire. And when I came to you and we talked about that, we talked about how so many times with the number of credits that's required by the state of Missouri, a kid that is really focused gets into the middle of their junior year, first part, they've got all of those credits. They've attained all those expectations. So their senior year, in some ways, in some situations, not necessarily a coast event, but it wasn't an event where you were really challenging a kid to get them ready to step off of your boat or a springboard to get them ready to go into higher ed.
I agree with you. And ironically, this weekend, just out of the blue, my dad, we were spending some time together over Memorial Day here, and he just said, do you guys have any kids taking PE more than once a day as seniors? I said, no, that went out after the first, I think, senior class. And it just was the evolution of getting to the high school. And I think if I look back at my high school career, really, there wasn't a whole lot going on in my schedule. And I think that's what we were looking at, is to say, what makes this a true full 4-year experience, the full 8-semester. And I think that college credit, plus at a small school, you're just limited on what you can offer with your staff just by sheer numbers. Mm-hmm. And those classes that we were able to put together from Jeffco not only filled gaps, but also kept pushing that bar higher, if that makes sense.
It did, and the outcomes by doing that, we created another level of energy coming off of that graduation with the fall semester, with those kids being able to enroll. So we were looking to enroll those kids, and we were actually enrolling those kids in the spring when we were getting ready for graduation for the following fall. Where has that gone from? It started for a few classes, some on site, some out there, to now we've got the 61-hour program or the AA program degree, and we have the 42-hour program. And to be quite honest with you, over the evolution of that, our total goal was we wanted every high school kid to have an opportunity to have a college course experience before they graduated from high school. We did that because we knew if we could give them that exposure, well, no one in my family's ever gone to college. I'm not expected to go to college. Well, let's try it, and you might find success. And if you find success, then that led to them being able to not necessarily be forced into going to college. I don't think every kid needs to go to college.
No.
But it gave them an exposure opportunity to allow them to find their path, find their way, to do something that they might not have ever thought about doing, and doing it in a way that it wasn't going to financially break the bank.
Yeah, and I want to be clear that the one thing we did have in place, it's always been a great partner for us, is ATS. So we've had kids over there since the inception of the high school when they were of age, basically their junior year. They could go over there and start earning those career and technical credits, college credits through the ATS. We had that kind of as a backbone for us. It was really filling that senior year, and then it's kind of stemmed down from there. But that was a lot of fun. Now,
and I think we have to give a shout out to Jefferson College. I mean, they took a huge flyer on us. When I sat down with Dr. Comiskey and Dr. McCaffrey, who was a part of the instruction at that time, when we presented that to them, man, they saw that as a win-win-win. It was a win for the kid, it was a win for our school district, but it was a win for them as well, because they were going to see some of our best students come into their college, which was, they could see that bolstering some of their performance scores as well.
Right.
Very rarely in public education or in the public sector of our jobs do you ever find a win-win-win. Most of the time there's a lot of win-losses.
Yes.
But when you could get that, have that opportunity, the college was winning, we were winning, the families were winning. And then lastly, I'll never forget it. I was at a junior high National Honor Society event, and we introduced the program that spring, and I had a grandparent come up to me afterwards that lived in our district. And she said, I want you to know I've been paying taxes in this school district for years. and I've not had a kid in this school district the whole time. But for me to be able to see that you're taking my tax dollars and making these opportunities available to these children, my grandkids, my nieces, nephews that are coming up now, I can see that the dollars that I've been providing is being used in the most efficient way to help these kids in our community bolster the success of our kids. And I can't thank you enough for doing that. Wow. That was a aha moment for me because I didn't expect that. I expected the families of the kids to be excited, but I never thought that we would get that kind of feedback from people who didn't have kids in our school.
Right.
And that was pretty exciting. You know, we receive a lot of constructive criticism from folks from time to time, but to receive that positive feedback was pretty important. And I knew I really felt like at that point we were hitting on something that had the potential to take off. So that was the first thing that we were looking at from 14 on that I really felt like that was huge. And something else that that you and I talked about at length, and we have here in front of us, I think, is the technology.
Mm-hmm.
The one-to-one initiative that Wayne Don John and his team with the technology, the building principals, putting that together was epic. There's no way to describe it.
That was my next segue. Really, without the technology and the one-to-one, I don't know if the college experience or college potential there for the credits would be as robust as it is now. There are situations where kids are taking an actual, online course where they're communicating, and other times it's, asynchronous. I think that's the right term. And other times we actually have had teachers come in, but the Chromebooks starting at the top with the college credit and then going all the way down. That was in 2013 when we looked at rolling that out. So kind of go through that, because that was, we were one of the first districts to do it K-12 in the state. It wasn't just, there were some districts at the time doing it to high school or for certain grades at their high school, but to go K-12 and talk about that process.
Well, it started with the building principals having a lot of confidence in their budgets with me. We had found our stride a little bit financially at that point, and we had come out of some of those financial challenges. But one of the things that we did with our budget is that we worked with our building administrators to pool resources at the end of the year that were not necessarily, they were committed resources at the building level, but we had not utilized every penny of those resources at the building level.
Right.
And by doing that, we were able to take a pool of money and working with the board to initiate the purchase of the Chromebooks and the interactive boards that we put in at Platten. We didn't bring the technology, the one-to-one to technology, to Platten right out of the gate, but we brought the interactive boards to Platten and Telegraph, and then the Chromebooks to the high school. And the reason why we did it in that format, we wanted our students at the elementary grades to start to have that engagement with those mediums of instruction that the technology was going to bring at the younger grades. And then knowing that we were going to close the gap from both ends was creating an evolution of the growth of that technology because there was a significant need in the high school because of the college tuition one-to-one. We had to get that growing and growing and going. Mm-hmm. And then we needed to grow it from Platten and Telegraph so that we were bringing it forward and moving it up. So when Mr. Donjon came to me, he told me, he said, there's no way we can do this with the budget that we have in the district for technology. We had $34,000 for a total budget for technology. And so I told him, I said, well, I want you to put a budget together. And as people know, I'm kind of a numbers guy, and I focus on money and focus on the budget and everything. And I began to work with the board, and we started putting together a plan. And we did a comprehensive engagement. I'll never forget, we had a TAC committee, which was a technology group. And those people came together. There was board members, there was community members, there were kids. You were on that committee. There was a ton of people involved, and we looked at multiple devices over a period of time. And boy, oh boy, did we find a lot of good, bad, and ugly that we were able to work through in order to choose a device that we thought was going to serve our needs. So when we got to the point of making the selection process and the commitment to the financial resources went a lot smoother than I thought it would because of the engagement of all of the people that we had with the board and the students and the staff and yourself, and making sure that we were making the right choice. And again, I think that goes back to R-VII. Choosing things that involves the community and getting their input and getting parent input and getting staff input and getting administrative and getting student input. And so we rolled that out and it took off. And again, just an epic, ton of energy, great experience. And you probably know more about the day-to-day successes of that than I do as a building principal and what was going on.
I just remember the anticipation of doing it full time in the fall of 2013. So if you can imagine during that time, we're trying to get ready for the first graduation. Well, I had a group of juniors working in the background on this one-to-one, and they were fantastic. Jacob Hill, Claire Welker, was it Saad Malik?
Yep.
And goodness, I can see his face. Baseball player. They shot that video, and I apologize, I can't remember his name. They put together a video. They went down to every grade level, and they were just fantastic working with the kids. And Jacob Hill was such a unique talent to do that. I kind of felt like that if people could kind of see it and also know that they could see some high school kids that were okay, comfortable with it. Really, by the time we got to the fall, I do remember at one point that summer, from a technical standpoint, I was like the only one in the building, myself and Lori Holdinghausen. And I was on a Chromebook, and I was going room to room. I said, Wayne, these things don't work. I said, there's not enough internet. Like, I don't know what I'm talking about. What we found was, what he found, is that our routers were turned up so high that it was confusing the machines. So we had to learn to turn them real low so it would only hit on one machine. Just little things like that. And then we would take the teaching staff. We came back that fall, we practiced it room to room to make sure it was working, and everybody, all 20 could get on or whatever it was. So,
and the teachers were the ones that was moving from room to room,
they were.
Again, and all the little stuff that we did with that was just such a unique experience. And number one, bring that many people together and get people to buy into it was huge. But I think the way that we did it, our staff saw the value of that return. I love the videos. I don't know if I remember the videos. The kids would disappear. Yeah, and we were using some really old.
There was the ghost of
yes.
class. It was the irony in that is that we hadn't even had a high school graduating class yet,
right?
Which was funny all on its own.
And yeah, we were working through it, and good things were happening because of it. And but again. Just a shout out to the staff and the students for being willing to take that risk. And so then we roll into Here It Comes, and we get to the fall of that we roll that out with that junior class, and we get to the high school 2014, and it takes off, and it hits, and it works. It worked because we did all of those trial and errors. I know Mr. Don John spent literally hours with you over at the high school.
Yeah, he's a lot on his own.
Wireless access stuff, a lot of time behind the scenes, making sure that we had all the stuff that we needed. And once it got going, and then we started seeing these kids finding their niche, and the kids were they were getting to their junior and senior years, and they were like, well, I'm taking a full college slate. I've got 16 hours or 14 hours, and that was a great feeling, because at that point I knew one-to-one was going to take us to a new level of success over the next 3 to 5 years, that even though we had experienced in 13, it was going to be bigger.
Right. Yep. One last thing before we kind of transition to something else here. To light up the night, that actually happened like the year the first graduating class would have been juniors. I remember the energy behind that, because there was such a passion by many parents and community members about giving the kids a Friday night football experience. And our budgets did not allow at that time to put those lights up and to have had, I don't think a lot of people know, particularly as time has gone on, that the lights to football and baseball field, there was never a public dime to the construction. That was all private donations, donors, businesses chipping in. Kind of go through the light up the night. That was another great moment I think for us just to see that for the community?
Well, I think it was a movement that was so organic. I'll never forget it. We were at a facility up in Festus, and Tanglefoot was a restaurant that was there. And we were sitting there one night with a group of us, and we had our first experience with the sophomore year of football, and they were all Saturday games, and we were coming into our junior year and looking at our junior season, and the bleachers at that time they're now the high school bleachers for the baseball field.
You kind of forget how small those bleachers
There were 400 seats there, and our football games, even with just sophomores, we were everywhere. I mean, people were coming out in droves for the stuff that was going on at the school at that time, and so we put together a group of people, and the Board of Education was a part of that. And our goal was to simply light up the night. Our goal was to have a Friday night football experience. And we came together one night. We had met at Tanglefoot. It was after a football game and on a Saturday, and we were sitting there talking. And then we scheduled a meeting back in the room. They had a conference room in there, and there was a whole group of people from the community. And I'll never forget, Steve Floyd, former board member, left the room for about 5 minutes and walked back in, and he said, "I'm all in, and I want this to happen." And he handed me a check for $2,500, and he said, "You said it's going to take $100,000." And he said, "So now we need $97.5." And in 6 weeks, we went from having nothing to having $100,000 and preparing for us to put lights on the football field.
Yeah. It was incredible.
And
look back at it.
It was a great experience. I always use Mr. Larry Blaha. We love the conversation. He gave me a list of everything that would happen. That he said 2 things would never happen in our time of me being superintendent at Jefferson R-7. He said one thing. He said there'll never be lights on this football field during the time that I'm here in this world. And he said I hope someday that we'll be able to play golf at the golf course next to the school district. So the first year we did the light up the night, Larry and I was there that night, and I personally went and sought him out, he and Debbie, and we stood together, and I said, there's number one. I said, we're playing lights under the, football under the lights. And he said, yeah, but we haven't made that golf course. Last year when we had our first golf event down at the golf course here next to Crystal Highlands, next to the school district, I sent Larry a text, and I said, we're playing golf at Crystal Highlands. And he said, okay, you can retire now. And it was great to see so many people in our community come together and say, I want to support that. Mm-hmm. I want to see that happen. Because we couldn't have done it with the resources that the district had. Right. We were way short of the $100,000, and to make that happen. And so we got a lot of outflow from Good Grace Act, and was able to get that going. We worked with ATG Sports, who specialized and actually built the facilities, Don Bollinger, and he gave us some directions and got us in touch with the people with the lights, and we brought the lights in, got those up, and finished that. And we didn't just knock that out immediately. I'll be darned if we didn't turn around and say, okay, we're done, now let's get lights on the baseball field. And a year later, we've got lights on the baseball field. And you're right, not a penny of those items, which was over $200,000 at the end, came out of district reserves.
Yeah, it's a heck of an accomplishment. That on its own was a heck of an accomplishment.